And somebody said to him, Jerome, what are you doing investing all this money in the film business? Don't you know everybody loses money in the film business? To which Jerome Seydoux said, somebody's making money. The question is who?
I don't have the answer here, but can you guess how much money you've raised over the course of all the films you've made?
Oh, wow. Billions. I mean, it's well over $1 billion, but I don't know if it's 2 billion, but, between 1 and 2 billion, right? Let's say in that range.
Can you talk about the process of finding money for movies?
Well, yeah. I mean, a lot of the biggest monies we raised were in tax preference deals, but also they were in the stock market, and then in, lines of credit. So they're all different ways. I mean, stock market is one thing, selling securities. Another is bank lines, which are based on the amount of credit amount of collateral you have, and then the tax preference money is based on having the people that understand the tax risks and feel it's worth it to them. So I think it's between the three of them. Yeah, I could easily count $1 billion, probably closer to 2 billion.
You say that film financing is an art in itself, that those who master the craft will be in demand. What does it take to master the craft?
Well, it might be a little too much to call it a work of art, although I consider some of the deals I did to be works of art immodestly. The thing about finance is that you want to have people who appreciate the risk they're taking, all right? And, I like to say that if a person loses money in the shoe business, they made a bad deal, right? Lose money in the film business, it's those Sharpies in Hollywood took you, right? One of my favorite stories, we did, one of the most creative financing plans we did involved these insured financing. We came up with these risk insurance. It's like I could take a group of 5 Paramount Pictures and give them that they would get back out of a corridor 25% of the costs they had in the film, all right? So essentially, and I'd give them the money for that 25% with a bank line, guaranteed by an insurance policy with a AAA insurer. So this was a way of spreading risk among 5 pictures and delaying the payback and giving away no rights. So you could, at that time, Paramount, like many of the studios, wanted to get as much outside financing for the program as possible because the rates of return they were getting on the money were not the levels that the corporate people wanted, all right? So this was a way, if I get the pictures and I still get the same distribution fees, but I have less invested, then of course their rate of returns are better. And Dolgen was a big deal about that, as a number of the guys who were running the studios in those days. So he loved the insurance deals, and so we structured them with bank loans against the insurance policy, right? And the result of that was we did maybe $350 million worth of insured-back fundings for Paramount on some 26 pictures over the 7 years of my Paramount deal. And then the deals blew up because a lot of bad deals had been done and the insurers stopped paying. And then it sort of devolved. This was in my opinion, probably the most creative non-tax deal I had done. And it was blown up because of 2 things. One, Chase Bank, when the insurers refused to pay, all they needed to really do was just extend the claim determination date because the money was in the pipeline. We could see that the money was coming, right? And, the executive at Chase said, no. You don't understand. We have other of these risk insurance deals. We can't do that. We have to demand the insurers pay 100 cents on the dollar. And so the insurers didn't pay. They sued. They got 100 cents on the dollar over time. And then the insurers, of course, felt that they had been schnookered. So I know where I was leading with this. So so AXA, the big insurance company, which had been one of the main insurers in these deals, suddenly felt they were ripped off, all right? And they filed suit against me and against everybody, and they lost it all at the end of the day. But there's this, the second time I had one of these pen and ink drawings in the Wall Street Journal was this story, and it said that, AXA, that was what they called the mushroom effect. They were just little people under the mushroom, and this guy, Peter Hoffman, had talked them into these deals, and he really understood it, and they were all bad deals, right? And so that was an example of AXA, a gigantic company, is snookered by me? I mean, please, all right? And so, of course, at the end of the day, not only did the bank get 100 cents on the dollar, but those pictures really paid off. So the insurers ended up doing what I had told them: just own the pictures, just put them in as another asset, just wait. The money is there. You got the Truman Show. You got, in fact, my favorite story is, after all of it, the one I said, there's this one picture you got to put in the deal. You got to put in the deal. It's a strange thing. You only have international rights. It's very expensive and all that, but you got to have this picture in the deal. How much does the picture cost? I said, well, it's going to be over $200 million. And he said, no, we're never going to do a picture. We can't do that. You know what that picture was? Titanic. They knew better, but I snookered them, right? But in any event, those deals ultimately turned out very well. And so the insurers flipped all those pictures they owned, actually, to Mark Cuban, and then Mark Cuban flipped them to somebody else. So at the end of the day, it all turned out that it was just fine. But at the time, it looked like I was this guy who had snookered all these big insurance companies into getting them into this deal, which, of course, to me was kind of funny. But it goes to why in the film business, people have to appreciate the risk, and they have to be able to manage that risk in their own minds. Like John Dolgen used to say, be aware of civilian investors. And what he meant by that is people that, would lose money in the business, and they would blame the business. They would think, oh, it's because of these terrible guys in Hollywood, when they just made a bad deal, right? Another story I like to tell is Jerome Seydoux, who was a very wealthy man, owns the Schlumberger fortune in France, and he bought a big controlling stake in UGC, and somebody said to him, Jerome, what are you doing investing all this money in the film business? Don't you know everybody loses money in the film business? To which Jerome Seydoux said, somebody's making money, the question is who? And I think that's really the thing you have to answer, and you ought to understand where the money is being made and what the risks are. So I try to deal with people who understand that. And they understand the risk of a bank, of whether or not you're going to get a particular receivable paid, the equity, whether or not there's going to be enough long-term value in it, and the tax preference, whether or not the tax benefits are going to be realized against what really is going to happen. And so a lot of it is the problem of explaining complex deals to people and expecting them to understand it. Whereas they often will be turned off by that when you really start to tell them, and they'd rather have their cousin talk them into a picture that, is so simple and it's going to be fantastic, and then they lose all their money. Oh, it's the film business, all right? And they didn't want to hear about what the real, risk evaluations are in the business. Look, the problem with the film business is that each picture is its own new product. Like if you have a Ford car, selling a Ford car is a logo. There's a certain value to the logo. But it doesn't matter if it's Paramount or Warner. If the picture is a bad picture, doesn't matter what logo's on it, it's going to fail. And so each picture is its own new business. And therefore, what you are trying to find are those things that give it the better chance of success. And at the same time, a better chance of being a great movie. Because it isn't just about packaging the picture so it looks like a deal. It's actually that package will result in a picture that is a good movie. And so, those are, I quote in the book many times what Tom Pollock used to say to me. He said, Peter, if it was easy, everybody'd be doing it. And it isn't easy. And of course, I love that challenge. I love the challenge of all the different levels of complexity. But you can't separate the economics of the business from the finance, because the finance follows understanding the risk of the business and what level of risk you're taking on it. And hopefully with somebody that is actually ready to understand it.
Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. Here is a complimentary question from our book Story Questions.